Tioni Theus was just beginning to live her life when someone took it from her.
Her body was left on the 110 freeway in the South LA area, and her killer is still out there. KCAL9's Jasmine Veal has the emotional farewell.
Her body was found on the side of a Los Angeles freeway, shot in the neck, execution style. It was 16-year-old Tioni Theus, a high school student with dreams, talent, and a loving family. But behind her smile was a nightmare. She'd been pulled into the dark world of human trafficking, exploited, and discarded like trash. This is the story of how predators targeted her, how the system failed her, and how her murder was almost ignored by the media. January 16th, 2022. A quiet Sunday morning on the 110 freeway. Drivers merging from the Manchester Avenue on-ramp spotted something chilling. A young girl's body, abandoned like roadside debris. This wasn't a mannequin. It wasn't a prank. It was 16-year-old Tioni Theus, a bright South Los Angeles high school student with dreams, talent, and a family who loved her. She lay lifeless, dumped without dignity, a single gunshot wound to the neck. The discovery rattled the community. How could a child end up murdered on the side of one of LA's busiest freeways? Who pulled the trigger, and why was she targeted? As detectives dug deeper, the truth was even darker. Tioni hadn't just been killed, she'd been exploited. Investigators uncovered signs she'd been drawn into the dangerous world of human trafficking. A vulnerable teenager, already dealing with family hardship, groomed, manipulated, and discarded the moment she was no longer of use. Her case shined a harsh light on the realities of sex trafficking in Los Angeles, how predators hunt for vulnerable girls, especially from marginalized communities, and lure them in with false promises before trapping them in a cycle of abuse they can't escape. And there was another, equally disturbing truth, the near silence from the media. While other victims' cases dominated national headlines, Tioni's murder barely made it past her neighborhood. The disparity was glaring. In the weeks after her body was found, questions piled up. Who killed her? Who left her there? Could this have been prevented? Before we uncover how Tioni was pulled into a deadly trap, take a moment to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. This channel exposes cases where the vulnerable are preyed upon and abandoned by the very systems meant to protect them. Tioni's story is more than a murder case. It's about society's failure to safeguard its most at-risk youth. It's about predators who operate in plain sight. And it's about a community demanding justice when the rest of the world looks away. This is the story of Tioni Theus, groomed, murdered, and left like trash on an LA freeway. A story that must be told. Tioni Theus was far more than another tragic headline. At just 16, she was a vibrant young woman with big dreams, undeniable talent, and a family who loved her deeply. At Centennial High School, she wasn't just another student. She was a straight-A achiever who impressed both teachers and classmates. Her sharp mind extended beyond academics. She had an extraordinary memory for music, recalling song lyrics she hadn't heard since childhood. Singing at full volume, she made up for any lack of vocal range with infectious enthusiasm and charm. Tioni's interests were as varied as they were unique. She played golf, a rare hobby in her community. Her cousin, Rashida Kinsey, called her a vibrant young lady that was just cut from so much that was ahead of her. Family members often spoke of her warm laugh and her ability to turn even ordinary moments into something unforgettable. At home, Tioni was the cherished only daughter of Tioni Theus, a woman who had long prayed for a baby girl. When Tioni was born, that wish was fulfilled, and mother and daughter formed an inseparable bond. Teresa ensured her daughter had every opportunity, from golf lessons to fresh hairstyles and manicures. Their relationship was the foundation of Tioni's life, a source of stability and unconditional love. Then, in 2019, tragedy struck. While crossing the street, Teresa was the victim of a hit-and-run. The accident left her with severe brain damage, forcing her to move into an assisted living facility. The change shattered Tioni's world. At only 14, she was uprooted from the home she'd always known and sent to live with her father, Darian Jackson. "That's tough when your mother does everything," said her older sister, Precious. "And then all of a sudden she can't do anything for you." Despite the distance, Tioni's devotion to her mother never wavered. Whenever she met someone with a car, she'd ask for a ride to the assisted living facility just to spend time with her. The loss of her mother's daily presence left a void that nothing could fill. Though she maintained her sunny personality and posted videos of herself singing and dancing on social media, the trauma had created vulnerabilities. "We're definitely not pretending that Tioni was an angel," her cousin Nefiza Kinsey told the Los Angeles Times. "She faced trauma. I want to humanize her. I don't want her to be seen as a prostitute or a runaway or somebody that people feel like, oh, well, they live that lifestyle." But those very vulnerabilities would become a target for predators, drawing Tioni into a world far more dangerous than she could have imagined. After her mother's accident, Tioni's life lost the stability she had always known. With her mother confined to a rehabilitation facility and her relationship with her father strained by the usual push and pull of teenage years, she turned more and more to social media for connection and validation. It was a decision that would place her directly in the sights of predators. According to court records cited by Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gaskin, Tioni was identified as a victim of commercial sexual exploitation of children, CSEC. There is evidence indicating that this young girl may have been the victim of human trafficking, Gaskin announced in January 2022, without releasing further details about the evidence. The grooming started subtly. Tioni's cousin, Nefiza Kinsey, told the Los Angeles Times that she had been pulled into prostitution and theft by an older man she met on Instagram, someone in his 20s who recognized her vulnerability and exploited it without hesitation. She was a teenage girl grieving the loss of her mother's daily presence, desperate for attention and belonging, and he used that to his advantage. "What I want people to understand is that Tioni faced trauma," Kinsey said. "I want to humanize her. I don't want her to be seen as a prostitute or a runaway or somebody that people feel like, oh, well, they live that lifestyle." What began as flattering messages and promises of affection quickly shifted into something darker. The man who targeted her was not acting alone. He was tied to a wider network of traffickers operating in South Los Angeles. These predators use calculated strategies to find and groom vulnerable girls, particularly those from marginalized communities experiencing family instability. Statistics paint the grim reality. According to the Congressional Black Caucus Report Snapshot on the State of Black Women and Girls, sex trafficking in the U.S., 40% of sex trafficking victims nationwide are black women, despite black women making up only about 13% of the female population. In interviews, traffickers have even admitted they believe they'll face less prison time for trafficking black women than white women if caught. For Tioni, the manipulation moved from online grooming to in-person exploitation. The man who lured her in began introducing her to others in his circle, slowly normalizing the exchange of sexual acts for money. Children cannot consent to sex work. Tioni was a child. Her life mattered, emphasized Tiffany Blacknell, special advisor for the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. As she became more entangled in this dangerous world, her absences grew longer, alarming her family. Her father, Darian Jackson, recalled times when she called him to pick her up from violent situations, moments that showed she was trying to escape her exploiter's grip. But leaving trafficking is never simple. For traffickers, victims are not people, they are property. An investment that brings in money. And when that investment tries to walk away, retaliation is often brutal. In South Los Angeles, where gang involvement often overlaps with trafficking networks, that danger is magnified. These are not isolated predators. They are organized, connected, and ruthless. What Tioni couldn't have known was that in this world, trying to break free can be the most dangerous move of all. For too many, it's a decision that ends in death. Have you or someone you know ever witnessed someone being exploited like this? Share your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Your voice matters and can help others feel less alone. After months trapped in a nightmare, January 7, 2022, began like many days for 16-year-old Tioni Theus, but it would end in tragedy. Still carrying the weight of her mother's devastating hit-and-run years earlier, Tioni lived with her father, Darian Jackson, in Inglewood. That morning, she visited him at work, her face troubled and distant. She said, "Daddy, nobody loves me. The only person that loved me was my mama," Jackson recalled. "I told her that wasn't true, that I loved her. But she just cried and cried. I felt her pain." Later, she mentioned plans to attend a party with a friend. Something about her request triggered a deep unease in Jackson, a father's instinct sensing danger. He pleaded with her to stay, but she was determined to go. Before she left, he hugged her tightly and kissed her, a farewell neither would realize was final. Throughout the day, phone records show Tioni was in contact with several individuals tied to the trafficking network that had ensnared her. Text recovered from her phone revealed plans far beyond a simple party. Evidence suggested she was orchestrating her escape from her exploiters. Surveillance footage captured her early evening near Manchester Avenue, not far from where her body would be discovered. She appeared anxious, frequently glancing behind her as if wary of being followed. Between 7 p.m. and 8:30 p.m., she made several calls, including one to a family member, where she cryptically spoke of needing to get out of a situation. Her backpack, found near her body, contained a hastily packed set of essentials, clothes, ID documents, and a bus ticket to San Diego dated for the following morning. This wasn't a girl planning to return from a party. She was preparing to disappear. Around 10:30 p.m., witnesses saw Tioni get into a dark-colored sedan near Figueroa Street. The driver's identity remains unknown, but investigators believe this person either killed her or transported her to the site where she was murdered. Forensic evidence tells a grim story. Tioni was shot twice in the neck at close range, execution style, ensuring she couldn't survive to identify her killer. The minimal blood found at the dump site indicates she was killed elsewhere and transported to the Freeway on-ramp. The location choice was chillingly deliberate. Authorities believe dumping her body on the busy 110 freeway was meant as a warning to other trafficking victims considering escape or cooperation with law enforcement. Even seasoned officers were shaken by the callousness. A teenage girl discarded on a freeway like trash. By dawn on January 8th, 911 calls flooded in from drivers spotting the body on the Manchester Avenue on-ramp. California Highway Patrol officers found Tioni still dressed in the clothes she wore when leaving her father's side the day before. When the news reached her family, the devastation was immeasurable. Jackson collapsed upon hearing that the daughter he had hugged goodbye just hours earlier had been murdered and discarded with such brutality. "Dumped on the freeway like nothing," he said through tears. "That just broke me down. It hurt me. Who could be so cold like that?" The calculated killing, the brutal disposal, and the evidence of her planned escape all point to a heartbreaking truth. Tioni Theus died because she tried to break free. It was a tragic final chapter of a life marked by pain, exploitation, and lost chances. Tioni's final hours reveal a desperate attempt to escape, but what happened next is even more chilling. Stay with us by subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss the investigation and the fight for justice.
She just left. So I picked her up, she was crying, I kissed her, gave her a hug. I didn't know it was gonna be the last kiss. So I feel like something was really wrong that night when she came.
You had a feeling?
I begged her to stay. I said, just stay with me. She said, nobody loved me. Because her mom, she's the only person who loved me was my mom. I said, that's not true, I love you.
It's troubling and disturbing because she was a young girl, 16 years old, who was shot to death and body was dumped in the freeway like she was garbage.
We live in two different worlds. You got the rich people, and you got the poor people, or middle class people, and we on the other side. You know, if I was a rich person, they probably would have found the killer by now. Who knows? But I think the Highway Patrol, I talked to him. He's a good detective. He said he's doing everything he can.
On the morning of January 8th, 2022, as commuters traveled the 110 freeway in South Los Angeles, several drivers spotted what appeared to be a body on the Manchester Avenue on-ramp. California Highway Patrol officers arrived to find 16-year-old Tioni Theus, shot twice in the neck and discarded like refuse along one of the city's busiest thoroughfares. Despite the public and tragic nature of the discovery, the initial investigation progressed slowly. The case received minimal media attention, barely reaching beyond her immediate community. For nearly 2 weeks, there were no press conferences or urgent appeals for information. The California Highway Patrol, leading the investigation since the body was found on state property, issued a brief bulletin requesting tips, but without the fanfare typical of high-profile cases. Then came a jarring contrast that laid bare the painful reality of whose lives capture the nation's attention. On January 13th, just 5 days after Tioni's body was found, 24-year-old Brianna Kupfer, a white UCLA graduate student, was fatally stabbed inside a high-end furniture store in the affluent Hancock Park neighborhood. Within 24 hours, her case dominated local news coverage. Within days, it made national headlines. Authorities quickly offered a $250,000 reward for information leading to her killer's arrest, combining public funds and private donations. The silence around Tioni's murder is deafening, said community activist Najee Ali at a press conference on January 22nd. A 16-year-old black girl is shot in the neck and dumped on the freeway like garbage, and it barely makes the news. But a white woman is killed, and suddenly there's non-stop coverage and a $250,000 reward. What does that say about whose lives we value? This disparity did not go unnoticed by law enforcement. Los Angeles Police Department Chief Michelle Moore acknowledged the imbalance at a police commission meeting, stating that Tioni's case deserved all of Los Angeles's close attention. Los Angeles County Supervisor Holly Mitchell was more direct. Time and time again, missing and victimized black women and girls are overlooked and lack the appropriate media attention in comparison to their counterparts, she said while introducing a motion for a $10,000 reward in Tioni's case. It is imperative we do not allow implicit bias and the adultification of black girls to continue to influence the lack of media coverage or public outrage over their murders. The numbers back up Mitchell's claim. A 2016 Northwestern Law Journal study found that cases involving missing black people make up about 1/5 of those reported in mainstream media, despite black people comprising 1/3 of all missing person reports to the FBI. In 2020, black girls and women accounted for approximately 34% of missing person cases, even though they make up only about 15% of the U.S. female population. Community pressure finally sparked action. On January 25th, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors approved a $10,000 reward. The next day, the Los Angeles City Council proposed a $50,000 reward, with Governor Gavin Newsom adding another $50,000 from state funds. Along with a $5,000 donation from nonprofit Operation Hope, the total reward reached $115,000, still less than half of the amount offered in Kupfer's case. At a January 26th press conference announcing the reward, Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gaskin revealed a heartbreaking truth. Evidence indicated Tioni may have been the victim of human trafficking. Court records identified her as a victim of commercial sexual exploitation of children. Children cannot consent to sex work, said Tiffany Blacknell, special advisor to the district attorney. Tioni was a child. Her life mattered. This revelation added another layer of tragedy. Not only was Tioni murdered and initially overlooked, but she had been exploited and failed by the very system meant to protect vulnerable youth. CHP Assistant Chief Jesus Holwyn expressed optimism that the investigation was moving forward in a positive direction. But as of early 2023, no arrests had been made. The case that started with so little attention had become a powerful symbol of the racial disparities in media coverage and law enforcement response to crimes against young black women. "We're not asking for special treatment," said Tioni's cousin, Rashida Kinsey. "We're asking for equal treatment." Tioni deserved the same urgency, the same outrage, the same resources as any other victim. The fact that we had to fight for that basic dignity speaks volumes about the work we still have to do. Tioni's story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about whose lives society values and who gets to make the headlines. Drop a comment below if you've witnessed or felt similar disparities in how missing or murdered people are treated based on race or background. In January 2022, weeks of relentless community outcry over the lack of attention to Tioni Theus's murder sparked a significant shift. What began as grassroots demands for justice evolved into an unprecedented coalition of government officials, community leaders, and law enforcement united behind one mission: finding Tioni's killer. The silence surrounding Tioni's case starkly contrasted the rapid response to Brianna Kupfer's murder, the 24-year-old white woman killed just days after Tioni. Kupfer's case immediately garnered national media coverage and a $250,000 reward, while Tioni's family had to fight just to be acknowledged. Time and time again, missing and victimized black women and girls are overlooked and lack the appropriate media attention compared to their counterparts, said Los Angeles County Supervisor Holly Mitchell during the reward announcement. We must not allow implicit bias or the adultification of black girls to continue shaping the lack of media coverage or public outrage over their murders. The community's persistent advocacy finally paid off. This incident occurred on a Saturday morning, said CHP Assistant Chief Jesus Holguin during the announcement. There have to be individuals out there who witnessed at least part of this case, and we need your help. By April 2022, the reward increased to $120,000 after Los Angeles County doubled its contribution to $20,000. The growing reward marked a hard-won victory for community advocates demanding equal justice for Tioni. During the January 26th press conference, District Attorney George Gaskin revealed a crucial and unsettling development in Tioni Theus's case. There is evidence indicating that this young girl may have been the victim of human trafficking, Gaskin announced. Court records confirmed that Tioni had been identified as a victim of commercial sexual exploitation of children, CSEC. Tiffany Blacknell, special advisor to the district attorney's office, stressed, children cannot consent to sex work. She was a child. Her life mattered. This confirmation validated what Tioni's family had long suspected. After her mother's devastating hit-and-run accident in 2019, Tioni became vulnerable to exploitation. Her cousin Nafisa Kinsey told reporters that a man in his 20s had contacted Tioni on Instagram and gradually drew her into prostitution. The trafficking link changed the course of the investigation. What began as a murder case had now become a spotlight on the exploitation of vulnerable youth in South Los Angeles and the deadly consequences of human trafficking. This brings us to why we must do more for survivors of human trafficking, especially children who are uniquely vulnerable to traffickers' tactics, Gaskin said. That effort requires prosecuting traffickers, but it also demands we do much more to prevent these crimes before they happen. Tioni's case has become emblematic of wider problems in how trafficking victims are treated by both the justice system and society. In February 2022, the Los Angeles City Council considered a motion, introduced in response to Tioni's murder, that called for an equity analysis focused on violence against black women and girls, examining how these cases are handled and their resolution rates. Justice needs to be served for everyone, not just certain people, said Tioni's cousin Nafisa Kinsey, reflecting on the stark difference in attention between Tioni's case and that of Brianna Kupfer. The tragedy of Tioni Theus, her exploitation, murder, and the ongoing quest for justice, stands as a painful reminder of the vulnerabilities young black girls face and the systemic failures that too often expose them to violence. While the increased reward and public recognition of her case mark progress, the fact that her killer remains free underscores how much work still lies ahead. For Tioni's family and community, the fight for justice is far from over. As one family member said during a press conference, "This is one thing I would never wish on anyone, even the worst of enemies." Their hope remains that someone will come forward with information that finally brings Tioni's killer to justice. The murder of Tioni Theus is far more than a singular tragedy. It lays bare a systemic failure in America's response to violence against black girls and women, especially those caught in the web of trafficking. The Congressional Black Caucus reports snapshot on the state of black women and girls. Sex trafficking in the U.S. reveals stark and heartbreaking disparities. 57.5% of all juvenile prostitution arrests involve black children. 40% of sex trafficking victims nationwide are black women. Traffickers openly admit targeting black women, believing they will face lighter jail sentences than if they trafficked white women. These aren't just statistics. They represent thousands of young lives like Tioni's, disproportionately targeted, exploited, and erased. South Los Angeles, where Tioni grew up, leads the city in cold case murders, with nearly half of homicides remaining unsolved. This ongoing cycle of violence and impunity hits black communities hardest. We have failures that are not being attended to, and our children are being ravaged and savaged. Tioni's Uncle Marvin Kinsey told reporters at her funeral. More than 2 years after 16-year-old Tioni Theus was found murdered along the 110 freeway, her case remains unresolved. Her family continues to fight tirelessly for justice, honoring her memory while confronting a system that too often fails black girls. "We want you to think about her every single day," pleaded Michael Dolphin, Tioni's great-uncle. "Please don't let her be forgotten." The investigation into Tioni's murder has exposed glaring shortcomings in how trafficking victims are treated by both law enforcement and the media. Though her case eventually gained attention following sustained community pressure, the initial neglect reflects deeper, systemic failures in valuing black victims. In response, the Los Angeles City Council introduced a motion calling for an equity analysis of violence and crime against black women and girls, scrutinizing how these cases are managed and solved. While a small step, it marks a meaningful move toward addressing the disparities illuminated by Tioni's case. The tragedy of Tioni Theus, her exploitation, murder, and the ongoing pursuit of justice, stands as a painful reminder of the vulnerabilities young black girls face and the systemic breakdowns that often lead to their victimization. On Sunday, we ask everyone who claims to care about the safety, protection, and freedom of black women and girls to stand with Tioni Theus's family, the South LA community, and the African American Policy Forum as we continue demanding justice for her and for all black girls who have been violated and discarded while this nation looks away, wrote the African American Policy Forum during Super Bowl weekend 2022. As we reflect on Tioni's story, we must confront uncomfortable truths about who receives justice in America and who is left behind. Her killer remains free, but her legacy endures in the ongoing fight for equal justice and protection for every victim, regardless of race, background, or circumstance. Tioni's story is one of thousands that deserve to be told. If this video moved you, please hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to join our community dedicated to exposing these injustices and demanding change.